Hey there, Silverpaw Reads here, and today I'm continuing on with those three words. This is chapter 16. I apologize for the huge delay. I already posted a comment on my YouTube channel for all subscribers to see, but I don't know if everyone saw it. But yes, I had pretty bad allergies for a while, and then I got really sick along with everyone else in the household, and now I'm just coming back home, and I've set everything up, and reason why I haven't recorded even after I felt better was I have a Wii U and a PS3, and I've been playing both of them a whole lot. I just recently beat Super Mario 3D World, and am working on new Super Mario Brothers U. So yeah, I apologize for the huge delay, but here we go. Let's get started right back in on those three words. This is chapter 16 again. It was scary at first, of course it was. Nowhere to run, nowhere to go. Their parents weren't here, they were on their own. Tails edged a little closer to Sonic. He was frightened and not afraid to show it. He could see the stares, particularly one from a certain dark-colored hedgehog. Disgusted, confused, all eyes were on the pair as they walked across the room towards the back of the class. They took a seat on the end row of desks and tried to ignore the hedgehog who followed them. His quills were streaked with crimson, his eyes the same color as they fixed themselves on Tails. His smirk contained a tiny, menacing pointed tooth. He leaned on the fox's desk and grinned. "My name's Shadow," he said, his voice surprisingly quiet. There was a pause. Sonic knew what was coming next. "Why do you have two tails?" Tails shrank in his seat as sniggers ran through the room. Sonic growled. He knew this would happen. Tails was only 4 years old, stuck in a class of energetic 6-year-olds. This was not looking like a good first day of school. He had, of course, been put forward a year due to his intelligence. The blue hedgehog shoved Shadow on the shoulder. The two had hated each other for over a year already. Sonic hoped Shadow wouldn't give him a reason to build the hate even more. "His name is Tails, and you better leave him alone," Sonic growled aggressively. "He's my friend, and he's younger, but he's smarter than all of you." The rest of the class stared. Sonic refused to make any friends in his first 2 years of school, though many kids wanted to pal up with him. Now he was claiming this weird new kid to be his friend. One of the kids began to see an opportunity to befriend Sonic. "I think your tails are really cool," Amy Rose chirped, approaching Tails. "I bet you can do all kinds of cool things with them." Tails smiled shyly, glancing at Sonic. Sonic grinned back. He found Amy annoying, but at least she was being nice to Tails. A couple of other children agreed and started crowding Tails, asking him questions and offering him pencils and pieces of candy. Tails happily accepted the attention, swishing his tails in request and doodling little machine designs. Sonic let out a sigh. It was all right. Tails would enjoy school. The silence was torturous. All three teens stood staring, Sonic and Tails at Shadow between the two of them. Sonic had smartly stood back from Tails, but it was too late. They had been caught. Tails could feel the rapid beating of his heart pulsing in his head. He couldn't move if he tried. He looked to Sonic for help, but the hedgehog wasn't looking back at him. He was maintaining eye contact with the darker hedgehog, searching for Shadow's thoughts. Eventually, the blue one sighed and took a step forwards. Cousin Shadow took a appalled step backwards, too. "Shadow, stay the hell away from me!" The black and red hedgehog turned and began to run, headed for the entrance to the hall where everyone else remained. Sonic felt his heart stop for a second. "Shadow, no!" He dashed forward, easily catching his rival when they were still a good distance from the doors. He'd always been the faster of the two. "Please, Shadow, you can't tell anyone. You know what would happen." He desperately grabbed the darker one's arm and yanked him back. "Get off me!" Shadow hissed, wrenching his arms free and shuddering. His eyes stared back at Sonic's. The fear they found was disturbing, yet somehow Shadow wanted to make it worse. Hadn't Sonic angered and taunted him for all these years, embarrassed him at races in front of Amy, beaten him in fights, pushed him to his limits until he snapped, and then he was the one who always got in trouble for their fights? Sonic deserved what was coming to him. "What are you gonna do?" Sonic asked quietly. Shadow clutched the arm Sonic had held and remained silent as Tails approached the two of them slowly. Shadow's eyes flickered between the both of them. "What the hell were you doing?" he asked, not expecting an answer. "You had everything anyone could ever want. Why would you mess it up so badly?" He allowed the confusion to settle on Sonic and Tails' face before turning away in disgust and continuing for the hall doors. Sonic snapped to his senses and leapt after him. Unexpectedly, Shadow swung around and smashed his fist into Sonic's stomach. Even when Sonic was faster than Shadow, Shadow was clearly better at the physical fighting. "I told you to stay away from me, disgusting freak!" Shadow yelled, speeding into the hall. Temporarily incapacitated, Sonic sunk to the floor, coughing. He could do nothing but let Shadow go. Tails rushed to Sonic's side, reaching down for him helplessly. "What are we gonna do, Sonic?" he whispered, panicking. Do you think he's gonna tell everyone?" Sonic was the one to feel helpless now. He wanted to reassure his friend, but he couldn't. They'd been caught. Did that mean it was over? It couldn't be, but how could they possibly carry on now that someone knew? Sonic groaned and rose to his feet shakily, arms wrapped around his throbbing stomach with his body bent forward. He slowly approached where Shadow had entered the building. Tails held on to one of the Hedgehog's arms. I'm not going to let him tell anyone, Sonic growled. Tails pushed open the doors before they reached them, still supporting Sonic. They scanned the room, worried about any changes in people's moods or expressions. But it didn't look any different than before they'd left. Tails noticed that neither Marine nor Blaze were in the hall, and guilt momentarily washed over him. But he couldn't worry about that now. Someone else was missing, too. Where's Shadow? Tails pointed out in a hushed voice. Sonic clenched his teeth, immediately noticing his rival lurking by the stage. He shoved his way through the group of classmates, annoying them. Not that he cared, though. When he reached Shadow, the Dark Hedgehog was making his way onto the stage. Sonic snatched his arm, this time keeping a firm grip on it. Shadow whipped around, his face desperate, disgusted. It was obvious that he thought he'd catch Sonic's homosexuality, that he'd caught Sonic's homosexuality. He struggled, but it was useless. You were going to tell everyone, weren't you? Sonic hissed, crushing Shadow's arm as hard as he could. Shadow winced with discomfort. What, you expected to never get caught? Dark Hedgehog paused. I mean, this was the first time, was it? Sonic's eyes were dark as he scowled at Shadow for a moment. Then he shook his head. He saw the repulsion creep back to Shadow's expression. It doesn't matter anyway. You can't tell anyone. Do you really think they'll believe you? Sonic yelled in pain suddenly as Shadow swept his heavy boot into Sonic's side, twisting his arm free at the same time. We'll just have to see, won't we? The Dark Hedgehog bellowed, unaware that the entire hall had heard Sonic's pained cry and turned to look. The disagreement itself was nothing unusual. Sonic and Shadow were always arguing about something or other. The power of Shadow's kick was shocking, however. Serious fighting was strictly banned at school, as Sonic and Shadow discovered at 6 years old when Sonic had ended up with a nosebleed and Shadow a cut lip. What are you two playing at? This furious question came from the teacher who was supervising the dance. Sonic was hunched over, head low, catching his breath. Shadow stood in ready pose, breathing hard. Tails trembled gently a few feet behind Sonic. Shadow straightened his back and faced the silent hall. He wanted to tell them. He wanted everyone to mock Sonic as Sonic had mocked him for 10 years. He wanted all the girls to forget Sonic and tag after him instead. The thought of Sonic being weighed down by disapproved looks and disgust for the rest of his life. Shadow couldn't help the tug of a smile at the corner of his mouth. I went outside a minute ago, Shadow announced. He had the full attention of every student in the hall. Tails watched on, feeling useless as ever. He wanted to run and hide. He wanted to cry. No. He wanted to shove Shadow right off the stage, jump on him, and pummel his smug face with rock-solid fists. Stop him from saying it. What did it matter if Tails got excluded? He'd do anything to keep seeing Sonic. The fox curled his hands tightly and leapt forward. Sonic and Tails were kissing, Shadow said in a rush, unable to force the words gay or homosexual from his mouth. He shuddered at the thought, the image, the words he had just announced. Tails stopped dead. Sonic looked up. The hall was silent as before. Shadow's hands shook as they were all eyes on him. He felt so stupid. They don't believe him, Sonic and Tails thought in disbelief. There was a sudden huge shattering sound, and shards of glass were rained on Sonic and Tails as drink bottles exploded above their heads. The hall of students erupted with noise, proceeding to shove past Shadow and advance on the other two, bottles and other items in hand. Run! Sonic yelled, ignoring the throbbing pain in his middle. They had to get out of there before they were killed. He jumped to his feet, grabbed hold of Tails' wrist, and made a dash for the door. They managed to barge their way past the screaming mob and get out into the open. Tails fought back tears as Sonic tugged him along away from the school. He could have stopped this in so many ways. Everything was ruined now. Sonic couldn't think of anything but pumping of his legs instead of his feet. He adjusted his grip on Tails' wrist and forced his legs to move quicker. He didn't even realize where he was headed until Tails' house came into view. All the lights were off. Both sets of parents were out whilst their sons were at prom. Sonic ran a little slower to his front door, unlocked it, and stepped inside, pulling Tails in with him. He took note of the eerily empty street behind before closing the door gently. Tails fell to the floor, panting. He hadn't actually been running, but was breathless from fear and the speed at which Sonic had pulled him along. The fox's feet hadn't touched the ground. What do we do now, Sonic? Tails whispered. Sonic dragged a hand through his quills like he always did when he was stressed. He winced at the situation, willing an easy answer to appear like a light bulb above his head. It didn't. Trying to make everyone see reason. Impossible. Try to make it out like it was all a joke and get Shadow to go along with it. Impossible. Sonic shook with anger. Shadow, that backstabbing son of a bitch. Even when they called each other rivals, Sonic had always considered Shadow a friend. How could he do something like this? It was too late to dwell on it now, though. They had to do something. The pair's houses would be the first place everyone would look for them. Despite the quiet, comforting feel of Sonic's home, the hedgehog faced his partner. "We gotta get out of here, Tails," he sighed. "We'll have to find somewhere to go, or something." Tails was terrified as he nodded obediently. Sonic ordered him to stay in the hallway, paused, changed his mind, and decided that they should stay together no matter what, or where they were. He pulled Tails upstairs and reached into the hedgehog's room. Into the hedgehog's room. Both of them looked sadly at the familiar place. They'd done so much in here, from playing together when they were first made friends, and to making love so recently. Sonic swallowed hard. He longed to fall into bed with Tails, wrap his arms around the fox, and fall asleep. Never wake up, or wake up that morning after they'd spent the night alone. He'd do anything for this to not be happening. "Sonic?" Tails said, taking hold of Sonic's hand. The hedgehog squeezed it, inhaling deeply. No point in all of these what-ifs and I wishes. This was happening, and they had to pull it together. The older of the two began rooting in cupboards and drawers, emptying everything onto the floor. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, but somehow convinced himself it was better to be doing nothing helpful whilst moving, rather than doing nothing helpful while standing on one spot. He found his school bag and began to shovel things in there, not really paying attention to what he was doing. Tails watched his partner in silence. He'd never seen Sonic so panicked before. "Sonic," he said quietly, "what are you planning to do?" "We gotta get away, just for a while," the blue one replied, emptying his bag and starting over. If we wait a while, maybe they'll forget all about us." His voice trailed off, actions glowing at the same time, until he stopped altogether. He pressed his mouth shut, directing his eyes to the floor. Tails gulped. "There's no way out of this, is there, Sonic?" The two looked over at each other, holding the gaze for a while. Sonic sighed and stepped forwards to embrace the fox, then stopped. The window glowed an odd orange color, and the mutter of noise could be heard. Sonic approached the window and cautiously pulled back the curtain. His eyes widened in a hurry to switch off the light, but it was too late to hide in the dark. Outside, a mob of at least 200 people moved in like a wave to Sonic's house. The sight was like something from a film, but chillingly real. They carried multiple sharp objects, rocks, bricks. Some people carried fire, burning atop what Sonic assumed was sticks. The roar that emitted from the crowd was oddly muted by the walls of the house. "We gotta get out of here!" Sonic exclaimed as stones thumped against the window. He slung his bag over his shoulder and grabbed hold of Tails' hand, pulling them out of the room and down the stairs. They slid to a halt as a chunk of brick shattered the frosted glass of the front door. Sonic steered them towards the back exit as they escaped through the back door into Sonic's yard. Tails felt the putrid smell of gasoline prick his nose and eyes. Sonic's house went up in flames a second after they managed to get out. The glaring fire swept across the house quickly. Sonic couldn't help but pause and watch his house, which he'd lived in all of his life, burn. He thought of Shadow, their friend who had betrayed them, all their other friends who had chased them away, the people of the town who didn't even know him yet had destroyed his home. He swallowed, shaking his head from side to side slowly. "This is medieval," he whispered in disbelief. Tails looked at Sonic's face. The orange of the flames reflected in the hedgehog's eyes and made them glimmer. Had their lives not been in danger, Tails would have thought about how mesmerizingly attractive this looked. But Sonic made a single slow blink and turned away, his eyes green once more. The shouts of the moms could be heard from the front of the house. "Are they still there? Somebody needs to check. No, there they are, look!" It was as if the two of them had snapped from a trance as they gasped simultaneously. Sonic clutched Tails' hand and started to run, leaping over the fence that separated them from the back of his house with a field and group of trees. The ground behind them thudded with bricks and rocks as they were hurled their way. Tails had to stop himself from screaming. It was all of his nightmares put together, but Sonic was here. That was something. The trees began to get thicker and more closely spaced, and a brief smile flicked across Sonic's face. This was the first he and Tails had spent practically all their time playing in when they were younger. How could he have forgotten it? Sorry about that, guys. Vague memories sparked in his mind. Every turn and every tree seemed familiar. He used to know his way around the entire forest. Overcome with a brainwave, Sonic took a sharp right turn until he came to a thick clump of tall bushes. He paused in front of them, shuffled his hand through them a bit, and leapt through where the branches were thinnest. The two of them collapsed to the dusty ground, too scared to even pant. Sonic looked around him. These bushes looked a little thinner and shorter than he'd remembered, but that must have been because he was older and taller now. They were still concealed. The noise of the mob couldn't be heard, though the silence was unsettling. Fox and Hedgehog sat deathly still in the dark of the night. After a while, they relaxed a little and got more comfortable. Tails clung to Sonic's arm, and Sonic sighed understandingly. "What you said earlier," Sonic murmured, keeping his voice low, "you were wrong." Tails looked at him. "What do you mean?" Sonic's eyes flicked to the bright moon visible through the trees. Tails watched him wonder. him with wonder. The moonlight had the same effect on Sonic's eyes as the fire had earlier on. "There's no easy way out of this," Sonic mumbled. "There's got to be some way out, some way we can live normally again, no matter how hard. We just need time to think about something."